it like this?
Yes.
Audio good?
Audio fine? Okay, then I'll not waste too much time. Please give a round of applause for Tom with the HoloLens.
Yes. So let's see if we can get something on the screen. Okay, I'll try to keep this a bit short. We don't want to do a lot of talking. We mostly want to see the device that we're talking about, the Microsoft HoloLens. Let me do a quick introduction because I don't work at Sanoma. My name is Tom Verhoeff. I run the company Metilium, which is my own company that I run together with Eric, my colleague, who's in the front here. We're specialized in building stuff for basically all cool new Windows platforms. Used to be just mobile, tablet, and PC. Later Xbox, and well, HoloLens is the latest addition to what we do. We know Sanoma because we built the Windows apps for nu.nl. We actually released a new version last week for those persons that still use Windows Mobile. But this stuff is way cooler to talk about, so let's not waste a lot of time. So I talk a lot about HoloLens, and one of the first things people usually ask when they see this picture is like, what is it really? And most of you guys have a bit of a technical background, so I probably don't need to ask this, but people think this is virtual reality, and to basically visualize what the world thinks virtual reality is, I just put this query into Google and looked at the images that it shows. And as you can see, if you're not a technical person, you probably think these HoloLens glasses look a bit like what you see on this picture, but it's a bit different, obviously. What you see here is mostly the Oculus Rift, the Gear VR, stuff like that, the virtual reality stuff, which is pretty much known for its fully immersive experience. That's what they call it. You put them on your head, and you don't see anything else anymore. You get into the virtual world. This is a technology that is right now at a point of a consumer breakthrough. A lot of people have phones that start to do this by putting it into cardboard or the Gear VR, and it provides a bit of a cool experience, but you have to render a full virtual world. So it needs a lot of processing power. For people that wear it, they have to get used to the fact that they basically lost their whole vision and are stuck in a virtual world. So it's cool technology, but it's not applicable to everything. So the next thing that comes to mind is augmented reality, which for a lot of people is, well, similar to virtual reality, but then augmented reality puts something on top of the real world. Most people would say HoloLens is augmented reality, and actually it's kind of a part of it, but if you look at Google Images again, you can see that augmented reality is more known for all the applications that run on a smartphone or a tablet, that you can look through the camera and actually render stuff on top of it. So then you come into a room with a brand new device that's pretty expensive, it can do cool stuff, and somebody asks, oh, augmented reality, that's like Pokemon Go, right? that actually happens a lot. So the real term that we use, and this is what Microsoft wants us to use as well, is mixed reality, which is kind of a subset of augmented reality. Again, if you look at the images you get, this actually is what HoloLens is all about. So you see the real world, and it not just renders something on top of it, but it also allows you to take the context of the real world and make the virtual images fit in. The cool thing about what you see here is that it's not just HoloLens. So the picture on the top left, for example, is a very well-known HoloLens picture that you see all the time. But this is, for example, a screen capture from another technology that's going to do augmented reality. You have Magic Leap. If you follow the news, you might have heard about them. They are doing something similar. They just haven't shown anything yet. They're going to do so soon. And there's a few more of those glasses, wearable head-mounted devices. That's what they're usually called. All these images also show you that people use a lot of fantasy when talking about those devices. Yeah, I know which one you spotted. It's somewhere on the left, I know. I considered removing it, but well, it's some form of mixed reality as well. So, to put it on a list, this is basically the difference and where the overlap is between augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality. So augmented reality and mixed reality, they both augment the real world with helpful information, where augmented reality doesn't really have the context of the world, and mixed reality really allows you to basically interact between the real world and the virtual world. Mixed reality, and this is basically key of what it's about, it blends holograms with the real world. So you can have a physical object and a virtual object next to it, and as the technology progresses, you probably won't really see the difference anymore. Mixed reality can transport you to a virtual world. I mean, you're free in putting a lot of holograms in the world, and if you basically replace the whole world with virtual stuff, you end up with virtual reality. And then virtual reality obviously replaces your whole view. This is just to get a bit of a context on where the HoloLens is in the whole world of all forms of virtual and augmented realities. So let's move on to the device. I have one right here. I'll show it in a minute. And the good news is we actually brought two. So after I'm done talking, we'll have two of those devices, and everybody who hasn't seen it before can try it on and get a bit of a feeling of what it's all about. There's a few things I want to highlight about the HoloLens. The first thing that's really important is that it's an untethered computer. That means that you can wear it and that all the processing power is inside it. It's basically sort of a full PC. There's an Atom chipset inside with some extra chips added to do all the holographic processing. This means that it doesn't need to be connected to a computer or something else. So where all the virtual reality devices like the Oculus, they require a pretty high-spec PC to actually run stuff, the HoloLens doesn't require that. And the reason why is actually also something that you don't realize that when you think about it at first, but in a virtual reality environment, you need to render a full world. But for augmented reality and mixed reality, you only need to put something on top of it. So instead of rendering a full world, you can just render a few objects, which obviously requires less processing power. This also allows the best experience because you can walk around and you're not even limited to one room. You can just walk through the whole building. It's Wi-Fi connected, so it can pull in its data and it can do its little trick everywhere. But then the real magic is actually more inside, and Microsoft provides us with these very cool animations that show what's inside. These sensors are what the HoloLens is all about. These sensors look around when you're wearing the device and try to map your room to what it's seeing and try to blend in the holograms. If you know the Kinect that used to come with the Xbox, this is basically a Kinect on steroids. It's kind of three of those sensors looking around all the time, constantly scanning the room. It's actually mapping the room 5 times a second with a depth camera, so that creates a 3D model of the room you're in, and then it combines it with the visual data to actually map that to a real-time picture where it can put in those holograms. As soon as you start wearing the device, it starts recognizing what's around it, and as a developer, you can also look into the data so you can actually see it composing a model of the room you're in. And the HoloLens isn't limited, like I said, to one room. You can actually map a huge part of this whole building, and it will keep it in memory and always use that data to remember where it is and remember where you left your holograms. So I can put something here, go to the other side of the building, come back, and it will still be at the very same place. Then the thing that's probably discussed the most when you hear people talking about HoloLens and what it does and doesn't do right at the moment, these are the transparent lenses that allow it to render something on top of the world. This uses special technology because you have to be able to see through it, but also project something on top of the world. This is also where the most criticism is coming from, because right now the viewport is a bit limited still, and if you're wearing the device, you will actually notice that you're kind of looking through a box, and if you look outside, you don't see any holograms. They made that decision early on in the development process, and it's basically a combination of what they were able to do with the transparent lenses, but also what they are able to put in the device in terms of processing power. So it's a portable device, so it has limited processing power. And since it's a development edition right now, they know that in X number of months or whatever time they need to bring it to the market, there will be new chips that are more powerful and it will be easy for them to actually increase the viewport. If they're going to do that, well, they haven't confirmed. We do hope so, because this is basically the one thing that prevents the best experience at the moment. And then you also, it has been mentioned, this is the chipset, and this contains a special chip that's doing all the magic. If you believe Microsoft, it's the holographic processing unit, which is designed specifically to constantly in real time process all the data that's coming from the various sensors. Because they have a special chipset for that, they can basically run the whole device on an Atom processor because it doesn't have to do the heavy lifting of the real-time processing. And then there's one more important element that really benefits the whole experience you get from the HoloLens, and that's the sound. As you can see on the device, there's these small red pieces that you usually notice when you look at it. Those contain the speakers that actually provide you with sound in your ears, but they're designed in a specific way that allows them to do 360 audio. So if something's behind you, you actually hear it behind you or on your side. And especially with the limited viewport, this really helps to, well, kind of see where stuff is, and if something's out of your viewport, you can at least hear it and look at it. And when you build apps for HoloLens, this is something you need to take into account, because well, the whole world is basically the screen you're working with. So if somebody loses his model, the sound will allow him to retrieve it. So a very quick summary of the inputs and outputs on the HoloLens. There's basically just a few ways of interacting with it. For a computer, you have your mouse and your keyboard. For the HoloLens, you have something that's called the gaze, which is basically what you're looking at. Instead of moving your mouse, you can just look at objects, and that will allow you to interact with them. Interacting is with very simple gestures. The air tap is basically what a mouse click would be. So you just have your finger in front of you, and you tap it down like this, and it will allow you to click something. You can also hold it, which will act like a tap and hold. And you can move your arm around a bit to drag objects depending on the type of app you're in. And then obviously, since we're doing natural interaction here, it also relies a lot on speech commands, because you don't have a keyboard to do very quick commands. You often fall back to speech to give a direct command, because otherwise you're like tapping around for 5 minutes to get to something you want to do. And then the output, well, the first thing we've seen already, which is the lenses, which show the actual holograms. And then we have spatial sound, which allows you to give directions in terms of the audio. So I can talk about this for a very long time, but we all just want to see how this thing works. So I'll do a short demo, which basically shows the basic HoloLens experience, and then after we finish this, we'll have a beer and combine it with some cool holograms. So the challenge is always to get it connected now. I hope it also doesn't really interfere with the microphone. So this is usually the moment that people think, what is this guy doing? You guys actually know it, but the people that walk through the hallway now, they're probably going to be like, what's happening? To be able to show you what's going on, I will connect the HoloLens to my laptop over Wi-Fi and try to get a live stream. This is also the part that's sometimes a bit flaky. It needs to connect over Wi-Fi first, and then the stream usually works, but sometimes breaks. We're going to have to see how it holds up. Fortunately, compared to last time, I don't know if anybody was here then, we don't need to use the Sanoma Wi-Fi anymore. I'm running through a direct hotspot, so this should make it a bit easier. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm running a hotspot from the laptop now, so I have a direct connection, and it should be connected now. Let me mirror my screen. Now let's just check the IP address. Oh, there it comes online already. So the first thing you need to realize is that the HoloLens is actually a Windows device, like a computer or a phone. So I was looking at the Wi-Fi settings, which is just, well, the configuration screen you know from your regular Windows PC. But this is not really cool, except from that it's floating in the air. Okay, so the basic HoloLens experience, you can see now that there's a small white dot in my screen. This is my cursor, which I move by moving my head. You might notice that the screen is delayed a bit. So indeed, if you wave, you'll see a few seconds of delay. So I'm going to tap the floor for a moment so you can actually see it draw the mesh of how it's basically constructing its view of the room. This is basically the core of the technology, because it needs to understand the room it's in, and it's constantly mapping while I'm working. Like I said, it does this scanning 5 times a second, which also means that it doesn't instantly pick up moving objects, which is actually an advantage, because moving objects are usually not part of the solid room, and you don't want it to use that for its mapping. It would confuse it. So let's find a hologram, and Microsoft conveniently provides us with an app that does nothing more than give us some holograms to put in the room. It's also going to be interesting to see if it's going to be distorted by the projector. It shouldn't be, but you never know. So let me start with putting a planet over here and maybe a space shuttle next to it. As you can see, I just look at things and I tap to pick them up, and then I give them a space in this room. The astronaut is actually a bit cooler because you can tap it and it actually starts moving. So as I walk around those models right now, you can see that they have a fixed position in the room. So I can walk towards the Earth, look at it from the downside. Also, if the stream stops behind my back, just let me know because I can't see it, and I will restart it. But I think I see something moving still. So now I can just do basic interaction. I can adjust the model if I want, and it's basically like an image from your computer. I can increase the size, I can make it smaller, I can move it around. And actually, when you look at it like this, it seems to be pretty easy. It just works, but when you wear the device, you start to understand that actually from a technological perspective, this is pretty impressive, because the device is doing all the heavy lifting. Now I can go on and on and on about those holograms, but let me just quickly show you one app to give you an example of the things you can do with this device. We always use an app called RoboRate for this demo, because Microsoft supplies it with the device to actually show you how it instantly recognizes the room and turns it into, well, an immersive experience. As you can see, I need to move around for this game, so yeah. I'll just show you one example. They deliver the HoloLens with a range of apps that show you the various capabilities of the device. This is a very simple one that's easy for demos. The first step for this thing is actually to put it at a wall. That's where the game starts. I'll put it next to the screen, so hopefully it's not going to be disturbed by it. What this app is going to do is basically turn this room into some sort of alien invasion environment. So so I'll do a quick scan of a very small area here. You can actually like look around your whole room, and it will use the whole room as your environment. This is also the thing that we're probably going to have you play with, combined with a nice beer. So what it's going to do is, it now knows that there's the wall here, and it scanned the room a bit, and as you can see, in a minute, something will drop out of the wall. And this is probably only one of those applications where you can actually destroy your whole office building without getting into a fight with your manager. Because as you can see, there's actually a gap in the wall right here, and I can look through it, and I bet you didn't know there was this. Oh. Now it's getting distracted by the screen. I hope it recovers. Yeah, we already were in a fight with the demo gods, and I guess they returned again. Yeah, it's flashing. It's trying to like recover where it is. I'm not sure if it's going to. I think we're back. Oh, here's my little friend. Yeah, so he's just telling me that the world's gonna end and that some crazy aliens are coming, but that I am the only one who can save it, obviously. I didn't turn on the audio because when we tried that, just the whole room started collapsing already from the sound. So I'm hearing some random talking in my head. I think it should start any second now. There we go. So what you can see now, what's important, that it's recognizing all the rooms, and it basically turns your whole room into a gaming area. So we tell everyone this device is great for like all sorts of applications and productivity, but we all just wanted to play funny games. What's interesting to see is that since it knows the environment, it can actually make those things, scorpion-like things, walk on the wall, and actually, if you progress towards the game, it will even do more interaction. This is just one sample, and as you can see, this thing is really stuck here. I can look at it from any direction. I can actually wonder what's behind the wall. This is just one example. There's a bunch of demo apps that I could show, but I figure it doesn't make any sense to talk for a long time, so we'll just quickly move on. One thing I do want to emphasize is that since it's just Windows, the basic experience of this thing is a start menu. You have a list of apps, you have all your settings, and if the IT admin guy asks you, since it's a Windows device, it will be easily manageable by the IT department. And we obviously all hate that, but actually when you think about deploying those devices within a business, that's actually a very good advantage because it will be easy to roll out, you don't have all your security concerns, etc. So that was just a very quick demo. I want to move back to the presentation for a sec because since we're developers, we want to know something about development, at least that's what you would expect. I thought about building a very small app for HoloLens, but that would take too long for this session. So let me just quickly run you through how you can build an app, and I will actually show you a sample of a demo app just really quickly so you have an understanding of actually how easy it is to get started building apps for this thing. Does anybody here have experience with Unity? I see a few fingers raised. The core of HoloLens development, where you can either choose for Direct 3D, which is more like the classic DirectX, which you would use for very high performance, high graphic quality, etc. applications, just like you would do with game development on Windows in the, for like the bigger games on Windows. Unity is mostly known for its mobile games and also indie games that are developed on Windows. It's a very accessible platform. And basically, with their latest releases, they include HoloLens support out of the box. So Microsoft provides the Windows SDK, Unity provides Unity, and they work together, and you can actually easily build HoloLens apps. I won't go through all the details for Unity, but what is important to know is that if you worked with 3D games before, usually you program your camera to move in a certain way to have a good picture, a good 2D picture on the screen. For HoloLens, it's a bit different because you're wearing the camera and it moves dynamically throughout your world. But apart from that, it's actually fairly easy. Let me just quickly show you what a project could look like. I still have it open up here. This is a demo from a German developer that I know pretty well. He's been doing HoloLens demos for about half a year. He got access to the device like a year before everyone else in the world. And what he's just showing, let me grab a mouse by the way. Let's see if we can make it work like this. If you're familiar with Unity, you actually know this interface. You just have your scene where you can put objects and you can programs, you can add scripts to those objects and give them a certain behavior. So for HoloLens, this app, and I will show it to you in a minute, is just a small platform with a few blocks on top of it. The cool thing about Unity is that a lot of things come out of the box. Things like gravity, things like collision detection, giving objects a certain weight and a certain speed and how they interact. And you can all transfer that to a HoloLens app. So by default, you have a camera. This camera has a position. In normal 3D games for HoloLens, you always put it at the coordinate 0, 0, 0 because it's just a starting point for your application and a person will just walk around. You can add some lighting, which will add shadow effects and allow you to see something, but what it's mostly about is just having a few objects. I hope it's all visible, but I won't go in too deep, so it doesn't matter that much, I guess. We have a container here with a few objects, which is just the bottom plane and a few cubes on top of it. And we have something else which is called the gaze cursor, and this is actually the first thing that's important. I think it's, where did he put it? Somewhere in the back, I guess. It's over here. This is a cursor. This is just a small cross. You want to make this move with the head movement that you have with the HoloLens, and this is one of those things that basically come pre-packed with the SDK. Microsoft provides some Unity tools that will allow this cursor to work. So you can basically put in any object, and in this case, they use just two cubes and put them together. You can use any object, attach a script that will keep it moving, and you will have your gaze cursor, which gives users the first step of interaction. Let me just quickly show you what a script would look like. of it. So I don't know if the code is really visible. Usually you would do the coding in Visual Studio, but I won't fire it up for this session. So if you're familiar with game development, you know that basically everything is about frames that are being rendered all the time, and with every frame update you do some calculations to calculate where objects are going next. So what this script is doing, it's called a cannon behavior. This is spawning spheres, balls, that go into the direction that you're looking. And this is basically the only code that has been added to this project to give it some interaction. So you can see when this scene is rendered for the first time, when it starts a gesture recognizer, and that is actually part of the code that's provided. And then as soon as it recognizes a tap event, and a tap is just the tap that I showed you, like with the base for all the HoloLens interaction, it triggers a shoot. And this is actually where it gets interesting, because what you see, it just creates a sphere, just a ball. It scales it a bit. It gives it a material, so it has a bit of a look and feel. And then you add a default Unity component called a rigid body, where you can just give it a bit of a mass and a position. And then you do some calculations to give it its initial position, which is where you are right now. Add a bit of force, and it will start moving. And this will then be added to the frame. And let me see if there's anything else in the script that I needed to see. Yeah, I think this is the only important part. So it will calculate the direction, give it some force, and off it goes basically. Yeah. Yeah, and so it adds a bit of, for example, it adds a collision behavior, which will give it a sound if it collides with anything. You can basically infinitely spawn balls in this scenario, and if they collide, they will start bouncing together. This is basically the base of what Unity already provides you with, since it's a game engine. And if I now render this on the HoloLens, I think I have it installed. Now obviously the connection needs to work instantly again. Yeah. Something else that worth mentioning, by the way, that I haven't mentioned before. This is the update call that is performed for every frame, and what it's doing for every frame is doing a ray cast. So it's casting a ray in the direction you're looking at, finding the first collision, and that's where it's rendering the gaze cursor. So that's the cursor you've seen before. It's putting in every frame, it's putting it again where you're looking. Now I think I lost my Wi-Fi, of course, so let me get that back. Okay. And this is the last thing I'm going to show, so Eric, maybe you can already start the other HoloLens. I do hope we have time left to allow people to give it a try. There we are. So we'll go back to the live stream. I'll start the app, and you'll see, since it's a holographic 3D app, it will take over the whole experience. If it's not a 3D app, but it's a 2D app, you can actually have multiple apps running at the same time, and they will be. There we go. Oh, okay. It's kind of messing up the rendering. So you can see the cursor. I can look at a place, and if I tap, it shows the ball. I think it's confused a bit by the walls. Well, anyway, let me. Just gonna quickly restart it. You can see that it remembered where I put all the holograms before. They will be here, and if I come back tomorrow, they will still be here. And actually, it keeps a list in memory of, on the internal storage. It keeps a list of all the rooms it's been before, and not just how the room looks, but also where objects were placed. And you can come back anytime, and it will remember the exact location of where it was put. That would actually be very interesting. So, as you can see here, we now have the objects. This is just a plane with a few of those boxes, and if I start tapping now, it will actually start sending those balls. And the thing is, since it since it knows where the floor is, you can actually see the gaze cursor moving up the stairs. And actually, when I shoot a ball, usually it will detect that there's a floor there. And we didn't add any specific code to do that. That's just the HoloLens that has this physical map. Okay, there's a gap there. Yeah, black isn't his best. Well, at least you get the point. You don't do a lot of magic, and you can actually see a ball bouncing down the stairs, and you have all your physics. So even without diving into a lot of code, you just put a few objects, beautiful scripts on top of it, and you actually have your first app running. And we don't know where this is what it's going to develop into. What we do know is that the HoloLens is not the only device that will run this holographic shell. Microsoft announced a few weeks ago that this will basically be a default part of Windows 10 for all PCs starting next year. So if you have a PC with a bit of a decent hardware inside, you will be able to attach a head-mounted device to it, and either in virtual reality or in augmented reality run all the holographic apps. So they will also support virtual environments where they will provide you with a virtual room to work in. They were working with Lenovo, HP, and all their hardware partners to bring other holographic devices to the market. So the only thing we do know is that Microsoft considers this to be the next big thing. And if you have some spare time, it might be fun to play around with it. All the tools are available for free. There's actually a HoloLens emulator, so you don't need a device, which you cannot get in Holland at the moment. If you have an Xbox controller, you can attach it to your PC and work like that. Okay, I guess we are running out of time.
One question, and then we'll other questions over beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, first, own people first. Very short question. The location, how does it work? The localization, the location detection. It's not GPS, right?
Yeah, no. So there's no GPS inside, so it doesn't know where on the map or whatever it is. To remember where it was, it looks at the Wi-Fi networks that it sees, and mostly the one that's connected to, which is the reference to pull in the right spatial mapping that's still in memory. And then if it has one spatial map, it can actually use what it sees to map it to that spatial map to remember where in the building it is. So there's probably going to be another device that has GPS built in, but this one, they also really don't want you to use it outside because it doesn't really work that well in sunlight. It has the same problem that all the phones used to have, that the brightness of the display is not good enough. So the short answer is it looks at Wi-Fi, pulls in the spatial map, starts looking at the data it's seeing in front of it, and then thereby can determine where it is.
Yeah. Is it possible to share sessions, so two HoloLens seeing the same thing?
Yeah, that's a very important thing that's not that easy to demo, but you have to build that at an application level. So there's a default component to do that. So you can actually share your session, and what it will do, it is from the app you define world anchors. So a world anchor is a specific place in this room, and it will use the data it has about that place and the stuff that's around to share it with another HoloLens, which will be able to pick it up, and then you can look at the same objects in real time and share your session. But you have to build it at application level. It's not default built into the OS, but it's provided by the SDK. That's it, I guess.
Okay, please a round of applause for Tom Verhoeff.
Yeah.
And that was it for tonight. Next episode is November 7th in Helsinki, so yeah, do join us if you are allowed to fly. Special thanks to Arjen for arranging the food, and again for Jelmer for mainly organizing this and doing the switching of the video stream. So please a round of applause for them. And thank you all for coming, and see you next time. Bye.